How about a weekend for Texas and Miami, college and the NFL? We start with our NFL Week 1 recap. We'll do it this way. Moving forward this season, we get some headlines, we get some other thoughts, an award that we'll give out. We have a new feature this year, the MVP tracker, which we will get to. Okay, so the headline, I think the biggest headline out of all this, Dolphins beating the LA Chargers in LA 36-34. Tua goes for 466 yards. I think all of us, despite, and I know last year with my kind of up and down, like, man, beginning of the year, I didn't see it. Then he goes on this tear, but then he gets hurt. I thought some of the games were worse than they actually looked statistically. But the health stuff that he had to go through, the doubt part of it all, people say, no, actually they figured him out a little bit. And for them to go across the country against a Chargers defense, which I know, look, at least week 1, they're all healthy, right? I mean, the Chargers seem to always lose the highest end of their talent by the end of the year, or you're like, wait, who's scratched again? And there's so many guys on the Chargers defense. I'm like, I like that guy. I like that guy. I like that dude. Oh, yeah, I like that guy too. That's right. Yeah, he's pretty good. And then they get absolutely torched by Tua and Tyreek Hill. So 466 for Tua. I think any of us has to feel good about him getting through all the health stuff and coming back and playing that well in week 1. The Tyreek Hill part of this is scary. 15 targets, 11 catches, 215 yards. And after the game, both he and his head coach talked about, like, hey, look, last year he was just running. Tyreek Hill even said on the first catch it was a route he ran last year and didn't get open because he just kind of ran. The way they moved him around on that motion where he ran through everybody and then looked like he was darting directly out of bounds, but there was a slight chance, like, wait, is he actually going to get to the end zone? He was unstoppable in this stuff. And this is one of the rare times where I think a lot of the recap and the quotes will be like, oh, man, we're just scratching the surface, or this guy has no idea how good he can be. Like when an NBA player is getting like 31 a game, like he's not even there yet. And you're like, what? In this case, I think it's real because of some of the stuff they did with him. Now, one of the other parts about the Tua conversation was if you get their timing messed up, if you jam the receivers, if everything's like snap, look, throw, it's very regimented, which made me believe, and others with Tua, you're like, okay, but can he get this going when things break down? Can you be a difference maker when everything's a mess? And yesterday, there was a couple different throws. The Berrios conversion to the left sideline. But the 3rd and 10 that he hit Tyreek Hill on for 47 yards was incredible. Completely flushed out, going to his side, comes back the other way. Granted, Tyreek is that good. But then on the touchdown, to get it past the corner and have that pass be perfect, it was just incredibly impressive stuff. Against, again, a Chargers defense that I know statistically hasn't been great, but at least all their guys were out there. They didn't have, I believe, one significant scratch going into that game. The rest of the statistics defensively for the Chargers are scary. Miami had 14 pass plays of 15 or more yards. There have been 2 times in the last 6,612 games where a team has allowed more than 14 pass plays of over 15 yards. So that was off the charts terrible. That note is from Sando. Our new feature is the Greeny MVP tracker. Greeny gave Tua the MVP yesterday. My guess is he doesn't think it's close. We're going to be updating this throughout the season, the Greeny MVP award tracker. We may even update it on Wednesdays. Not afraid, but we will update it, and we will update it often. Miami ended up with 8.2 yards per play. So considering the travel part, the Tua health, the Tyreek part, and on top of everything else, a Miami defense where it didn't feel like they were getting a ton of pressure on Herbert. And then when they needed to, and granted, the intentional grounding thing completely screwed up the Chargers after the missed extra point. We were thinking maybe they're going to go down the field. It's a Herbert moment here. But Dolphins dialed it up perfectly. That looks like a very talented team. And it also kind of changes the AFC part of this because all of us, and I think for good reason, you look at the 3 teams, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, and you go Mahomes, Allen, Burrow. You're like, does it stop there? But then you've got Lamar, you've got Trevor Lawrence, you've got whatever Rodgers ends up being here with the Jets, which I imagine is better than what he was last year with the Packers. And then Herbert, there's still some hope for Watson. But I know it's only week 1, but for Tua and the Dolphins, like football, the NFL works in a way where it shouldn't just be those same 3 teams again this year. There should be another team, and Miami's certainly announcing its presence with authority to get the season started. Okay, Cincinnati goes into Cleveland. and looks terrible, right? Burrow had the second worst game by a quarterback in week one, Daniel Jones. How about your primetime Giants? I had a rant on the primetime Giants. I realized after a couple of years, I hate watching them in primetime all the time. I don't think it's fair after they made the playoffs last year to go that, but it wasn't a great start for the Giants. They got smashed by Dallas. Got a lot of work done, though. All right, so Burrow and Cincy go 2 for 15 on third down. We know weather was a factor, and on the other side, it's not like Watson was lighting it up, but it's really about the Cleveland defense here. Bill Barnwell, ESPN, pointed out something great here about Cleveland's coverage and how they forced Burrow to throw outside of the numbers. Burrow threw 71% of his attempts outside the numbers, which is actually a career high. And when you watch Denzel Ward hold up, other than the one penalty, I love him. To have that kind of elite talent on the outside, I just think allows you to live a certain way. And I think that's what Cleveland was trying to do with their defense here. They're like, you know what? Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's changing up the game plan. But we like Ward in this matchup, even though it's up against somebody like Jamar Chase, who I'm always going to favor in every single matchup. You wouldn't think one-on-one with Burrow and Chase that anyone would ever win. And Cleveland found a way to win to go ahead and do that. So not a great game from Burrow. I'm not going to freak out about the whole thing. Myles Garrett continued to just all over the place, wreck everybody. He had a rush from the right side, so against the left tackle, where Orlando Brown looked like he got his hands on him, changed his course, and then Garrett just kind of pops back up, continues on his path, got a hit on the quarterback. Cleveland's now won 6 of 7 against Cincinnati. So for Bengals fans, this isn't exactly anything new. The other major headline, I think, if I had to pick three, would be San Francisco dominating Pittsburgh. So, look, we knew it would be a wake-up call for Kenny Pickett versus last year's number one defense. But I didn't think it would be this bad. He ended up with 2 picks and a lot of miscommunication where he's throwing behind the guy and I don't even know if they're route options or if they were just missed throws. He said that, there was one play, I think to Freiermuth, the tight end who we all like, where he was like, he saw something and I saw something else. So maybe it's just all of those things. He should have had a third pick that was a pick 6. My guy, Fred Warner, just flat out dropped it. But the other pick that he ended up throwing was a Warner tip. But yeah, that was a pick 6. This thing could have been worse. He was sacked 5 times. They were down 17-0 at home. The Steelers' first time down 17-0 at home with that number since 1997. The pick at preseason was incredible. And I don't think it's going to be this bad, but there was real hope that Pittsburgh, who always finds a way to at least be a game over 500, even though they haven't won a playoff game in 6 years, you look up and be like, wait, are they actually kind of good, even though I'm kind of writing them off? And that's just Pittsburgh football. They find a way to still be competitive, even when a lot of us are just looking at the talent being like, I'm not sure. But in this case, it felt like, wait, they may have the guy. They may have the guy that was overlooked in the draft because he went a lot later than normally quarterbacks would go because of the preseason. And again, I think the number was that he had the highest QBR of any of the guys, tested out better, had the best grades of any of the quarterbacks that played in the preseason. But I've always have that haunting Danny Cannell story in my head whenever anyone unproven lights it up, because he had one game with the Giants where he was like, the other team stayed in like the most basic coverage. They didn't care. We ran this 4-go play where it was like 4 routes where they were all verticals and then they stopped. And he goes, they didn't change the coverage, and I hit it on the first one, and we ran it 4 times in a row, and we scored a touchdown. And he's like, the media ate it up. They all talked about how I was figuring things out, how I took control of the offense, how I was seeing things. And they're like, of course, they're all complimenting me. So I just agreed with them. And he goes, knowing deep down, they didn't even try to defend the one thing. They just wanted like the game to be over with. He's like, I didn't do anything impressive, nothing impressive. It just looked really good. I'm not saying that Pickett is Danny Cannell, but the preseason stuff always scares the hell out of me. I'm not going to be all in on somebody. Granted, if somebody looks terrible and you doubt them, you're going to use that. But look, it was just a really, really bad afternoon for a Steelers team that has some hopes and thinking that they have a guy. Okay, the best win and worst loss. We'll do it every week. Best win is Dallas. Daniel Jones had a QBR of 8, 171 yards total for the Giants offense, 3 touchdowns. Dak didn't even have to light it up, but the Dallas defense we know is really talented. And it'd be nice if Dak had something where he feels like I don't have to do this every single week. Because I think there have been some Dak seasons where the offense is just on fire. And, when you play quarterback that way, you're raising your risk level. And I still think that Dak last season, the interception numbers are an anomaly compared to who he's been throughout most of his career. The worst loss, Pittsburgh, certainly an option. Giants getting housed like that. So if I'm not going to go with those because I've already talked about them, how about Seattle? There's a real one-hit wonder thing with Geno Smith. I'm not saying it's fair. He was terrific last year, way better than I thought, completed 70% of his passes, but it's just what's going to happen. Lose a division game. By the way, Stafford, how about him looking healthy? How about when he stepped up in the pocket against a rusher and just moved? You're like, wait, I don't think I've seen him move like that in like 2 years. But it being a division game, and there'll be a lingering kind of, is this whole thing a fluke with Geno, which may feel really unfair, but I'll admit, based on who he had been prior to last season, it's not something that I'm going to shake overnight. Numbers you should know. I have one for you. You know how much I love win probability, right? So the win probability number gets flashed up like it means anything. Or when a team comes back after all these simulations of who would likely win when up late, pretending as if these comebacks are never going to happen. It's pointless math. It's trying to make something easy more complicated. But I guess if you get a little ad banner out of it, who am I to judge you for taking the extra cash? So think about this. Vegas, Denver. Vegas gets a first down, 142 left in the game. Denver has used all 3 of their timeouts. Vegas is about to take a knee and run the clock out here and win the game. And the win probability number pops up at 83%. I think it should be higher. That's just me. I'm not an engineer. I just think it should be higher. Okay, award time. The Calvin Ridley Award. We're not doing it every week, but we're going to give out an award every week. This award is for the college player who looked like a beast in college and then looks really small once he's next to NFL bodies. Now, give me some leniency here because the guy that I'm giving the Calvin Ridley Award to did not look huge when he was in college, but my God, does Bryce Young look small on an NFL field. It's alarming. He is alarmingly small. And I know you're saying, well, wait a minute. This is new? First time watching him? Yeah, it's the first time watching him in an NFL game. It happens. And I stress this all the time. Whenever I'm doing all the draft stuff and I love going to the combine, there is no replacing the value of just seeing bodies next to other bodies. Like you can know what a guy's listed at, you can know what he weighs in at, but sometimes it's like, I don't like his shoulders, or why does his ass look like that? Or does he have thin ankles? Does he have thick ankles? Does he have long arms? Is he skinny fat guy where he thinks he's tough, but his wrists are really small? That might be a personal thing. So I'm just, when I saw Bryce Young out there against Atlanta, I'm like, dude, this guy looks so small. Now, he listed at the combine 5'10" and an eighth, 204 pounds. I don't think he's 204 today. I think they tried to just get him as heavy as they possibly could before the combine. Maybe he is. I don't know. Kyler, when he was drafted, was 5'10" and an eighth, but 210 pounds. But body type wise, as much as Kyler's having a hard time of holding up physically, Kyler's thicker. He's got the baseball ass. There's a little bit more to him. That's one of the things Russell Wilson always had. I don't know that I've seen a player at quarterback look as small. I don't care about the listed height and weight. Look as small physically as Bryce did since maybe Doug Flutie. And the number 1 overall pick making his debut in losing streak continues. Again, David Carr, the last one to get a win 21 years ago. A few random observations as we finish up here. Jordan Love looked good. He looked good. The second touchdown throw to Doubs. What if they're right again about a quarterback? Everyone will want everyone to sit for like 3 years. Fields did not look good. The one touchdown that he had when the game was still kind of a game, the Mooney touchdown, although it never really felt like much of a game. I think it was his first option, so he never had to take his eyes off of him. Nice throw, great route, good catch in the back right side of the end zone. The interception, he has interceptions where I just don't know if he sees stuff, like college interceptions, where you're like, okay, at the top of the route where you're expecting it to go, can you peek over at all to see if somebody's hanging down in zone or if this is bracketed off? And the last pick was one of those picks that was really, really bad. So it's still TBD in Fields, but a little worried. Mike Vrabel with the kimono look. Now, not a strict kimono, but it was a weird deal. I know there's some workout shirts where guys have the slats cut out or little slits in the side. And I'm not talking about like workout stuff, but it was like kind of this long short sleeve hybrid deal. And then it was cut up the sides like really far. These guys love adjusting the stuff. Maybe it's the Belichick family tree. Although Deion does this thing with his sleeves that actually looks really cool. But of course, it's Deion Sanders, so most of the stuff he does look cool. But it's just a worse look when you lose, when you have to go across the field and shake hands. You're like, what is he going with? And I know there's some of this athletic stuff that has this up the slit side pre-cut for you, but just one observation. The final one to close out the week. Zay Flowers for Baltimore is going to be the best wide receiver Lamar's ever had on his team.